Well, hey, good evening, guys. That voice of the Bulls is going to be joining us momentarily. Um, we are on the conversation room tonight, and my co-host. Why, hello. How are you, Miss Gina?
Hi, thanks for introducing me.
I'm not good at that stuff. Anyway, so this is our first episode, and taking a new approach at this tonight, huh?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
excited.
All right, let's bring one of our guests on. One of my returning guests, one of the first guests to be on the show tonight, Mr. NFL Outdated. How are you?
Doing well. Any day I get to talk about football or sports is a great day.
Yes, sir. Completely agree. And let's bring on the main guest tonight. Bring him in. He is the voice of pretty much all Chicago, probably by now. Mr. Tim Sinclair. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm great. How are you guys? I feel weird. I used my actual name. I feel like I need something catchy and twittery like you guys all use, but do better next time.
If you want to change it real quick, you can.
No, we're good. I mean, my Twitter name is pretty much my actual name anyway, so it's not really going to change much.
All right. Okay. So I saw you got to go into Sears Tower the other day. How was that?
That was great. I can't believe I hadn't done it yet. And my two sons and I were in town talking about all the things we wanted to do when they were up there for the week, and we're like, we got to get that done. So we went and walked out on the glass and got pictures taken, and it was great. I highly recommend.
Were you a little bit nervous on the glass?
A little. Heights don't bother me really, but it is still weird stepping out onto what appears to be nothing when you're 1,300 feet in the air. But once you do it, then it's fine. But the first step was a little weird.
All right. I saw you had an interesting podcast the other day too. You went over the Super Bowl. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got a podcast entitled The Call, and basically what I do is I go through some of sports' most famous moments with the men or women who made those calls to talk about what the atmosphere was like and what they were thinking when certain things were happening, and just get all the behind the scenes stuff. And so the one you're referring to was with Jeff Joniak, who does play-by-play for the Bears. And it was about Devin Hester's run back of the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl, which had never happened and still has never happened. And it was just, to me, fascinating to hear kind of all the ins and outs of how that went down and what Jeff was thinking, and listen to the call again. And man, it's been a labor of love project for me, but it's been a whole lot of fun. I just recorded another one today about Malice at the Palace with the Pistons and the Pacers, which, man, that was incredible too. So I can't wait to get that one done.
How many times do you? How many times?
Really good.
How many times do you podcast?
No, it's okay. I was asking.
Per week, I would say I try to do one every 2 to 3 weeks. It's not just an interview. It's like documentary style, with clips, and it takes writing and production, and there's a lot that goes into it. So I've been trying to do every 2 to 3. I'm 4 episodes in now, and I've got another 5 recorded. The interviews are recorded, but now comes the hard part of doing all the research and the writing and getting everything together. So that's about as quick as I can do them.
When you do those, Tim, what do you learn from other announcers? I mean, what do you kind of pick up as far as maybe even that research part of it, but even kind of the calling of games and things like that?
Everybody has their own routine and method and style, but the thing, I think, it was not necessarily intentional. I was really trying to say, all right, who do I know who can help me do something interesting that I'm already involved with? And so I know a lot of announcers. So that's why I went this route. But the great thing is that announcers are really good at telling stories. Like, I could get the athletes involved in these things to do interviews in a lot of cases, but the stories wouldn't be nearly as good, because announcers are professional storytellers. And so hearing from them what has gone on behind the scenes and how it all played out, to me is just as interesting, if not more so, than hearing the athletes tell it themselves. Partly because we've already heard that. That's what ESPN shows you and SportsCenter and all that kind of stuff. But it's also just better storytelling. So I don't know that I necessarily pick up anything strategically that I take with me, but I do find the behind the scenes stuff fascinating because I experience a lot of that in what I do anyway, that I don't necessarily get a chance to share a whole lot. And these guys, I think getting an opportunity to do that has been a lot of fun for them and hopefully a lot of fun for our audience.
Do you ever get nervous about names you're not sure of, or how do you handle that situation?
I almost never get nervous. I'm weird that way. I realize that. The only time I do is if I feel like I'm unprepared. And so if I do have a name that I don't know how to pronounce, or I haven't gotten confirmation on, or I haven't had a chance to go over, that can sometimes cause me a bit of pause. But typically, I'm prepared and know sort of what I need to do. If there's any tricky ones, I've practiced them a few times. Giannis Antetokounmpo in the NBA was the one that I said Antetokounmpo, like over and over and over and over again, so that I didn't ever have to think about it. There was a time I was doing soccer at Soldier Field with Manchester United and Paris Saint-Germain, and typically they get us the rosters and the lineups half an hour to an hour early, so I have time to go over them and look at them. Well, in this case, they had taken them to the Soldier Field press box, which is in the southeast corner, but I'm in the media deck, which is on just above the first section on the west side. And so they kept saying, yeah, we're bringing them up. And they never showed up until like it was time for me to start reading them. And finally, I'm reading them off of a phone because someone took a picture of the lineup and it was handwritten. And so I wasn't prepared. I hadn't had a chance to go over all these names with all the 60,000 Man U fans in the building, and I'm having to do it on the fly, and that made me nervous. But otherwise, I generally feel like I've gone in with some bit of research, so I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, you need to do research pretty much on anything you do as far as podcasting or actually anything you need to do. So researching is a very key fundamental to whatever we do, kind of, because we're kind of like announcers too, because we're announcing to our audience, right?
Right. And at this level, thankfully, I get a lot of people who they have pronunciation guides. If you're doing high school, you never know what you're going to get. You probably have nothing. You're going around the stands asking parents how to say people's names. But thankfully, from my level, most of the leagues have official guides that I can study ahead of time, so I'm making sure I'm getting them right.
Have you ever had? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Have you ever had players kind of come up to you and ask their name to be said a certain way, or to hear it before kind of everything? I mean, do players get involved at all?
Typically not. Typically, what they've done is the player has told the PR folks with the team. The team has written it out phonetically and put it in the guides that everybody gets. On occasion, in college, I will have had. Typically, the players don't care that much, or even if they did, would know even who to talk to. So I will occasionally go ask a player in college, like if they're right there, hey, quick question. I want to make sure I get your name right. Say it for me. And they usually appreciate that. But on the pro level, they've kind of gone through that whole thing. In soccer, they actually record the athlete saying it and put it in a private SoundCloud account, so I can go and hear the actual player say it for me, so that I know I'm getting it right. But typically, we don't have too much interaction on pronunciation stuff.
I was going to ask, have you watched YouTube to get a better pronunciation on any of them?
I have.
Soccer names are hard for me.
Yeah, soccer.
Have you ever gone on Google and typed in how to pronounce? Yeah.
Yep.
Have you gone on Google though and said, how do you pronounce such and such name?
I have. The risk is that on YouTube, sometimes they will have actual humans saying the names, or you actually get an interview with that player. So you can go, oh, yep, that's exactly it. But the ones where Google, it's like the actual computer trying to say it. I generally don't trust those. Sometimes if it's the only thing you have to go with, you can, but it's difficult to assume that the computer is saying with whatever emphasis needs to be. That's a risk to me. So I try not to lean on that if I don't have to.
So, who were some of the announcers that you kind of grew up and idolized, and then how did you kind of develop kind of how you wanted to do things when you're first starting out?
Yeah, it's weird because this was never my plan. Like, I was going to be an architect, and I went to college to be an architect. I had no inkling whatsoever I was going to do radio or public address or any of that kind of stuff. So I remember some announcers, but I didn't ever go, I need to pay attention because this is what I want to do. Ray Clay was the first one I remember doing the Bulls. Of course, he's part of what made that intro so famous. Jim Shepard, who did Illinois football and basketball for about 25 years. My family moved to Champaign, where the University of Illinois is, when I was in junior high. And so I started going to a lot of games, and I remember his voice. And when I would hear it, that meant I was at an Illini event. It just made it feel like home. But I haven't tried to pattern myself off of them. I just knew the effect they had on me. And so my goal has always been to be uniquely me. Sometimes you have to, in the case of the Bulls intro, for example, there are certain parts of that are historic and iconic and that you're going to keep. But in terms of how that's done, I always want to be authentic, because if I'm pretending to be somebody else, I think that comes through, and I don't want to pretend to be anyone. I just want to do what comes natural to me, and ideally people will resonate with that. It will be effective. But if not, that's okay too. Maybe there's some place better for me to be. And haven't really, thankfully, had that too much in my career. It's always seemed to have worked. But that's something I really feel is important, is to try to be authentic and real throughout the situation, not just a robotic voice of God in the sky, but an actual human tied to the voice that people are hearing.
Well, they're getting to meet the human behind the voice tonight. You don't do any Blackhawk games?
Hockey is the one professional sport I have never done.
They've never asked you?
I'm sorry?
They never asked you, or do they have their own?
Not yet. Gene, I think, is at most of those. Gene Honda, who does the Blackhawks and the White Sox. I have done a handful of Major League Baseball games for the Sox. I've done soccer, basketball, football, but have not done hockey. So one of these days I'll get my NHL debut, and then I can have checked them all off.
Tim, which one's your favorite? Which sport or which team?
It's kind of like choosing your favorite kid. It's really hard to answer that. I like them all for different reasons. Like basketball, I love because that's what I played in high school, and also you're a part of the spectacle. You're sitting courtside. You're a foot from the players. When the crowd goes crazy, you're feeling it. Whereas football and soccer, you're kind of watching it unfold from a bit of a distance. So that's why I like basketball. I like football because it's hard. Football is very, very difficult to do because there's just so much going on. And instead of 10 people out there, you've got 22 of them. They're farther away. They're moving faster. They're piled on top of each other. And you have to say something every single time, even if there's an incomplete pass, you're talking. Whereas in basketball, you don't talk on a missed shot. But in football, you do. It's like pass incomplete, intended for Darnell Mooney, 2nd and 10 for the Bears at their own 23. And you've got to do that before the play clock gets to a certain level, or before they get over the ball to make the next snap. So you're tired after 3.5 or 4 hours of a football game because there's just so much to do. And from a soccer perspective, like the atmosphere is just so unique at a soccer match where there's drums and trumpets and chants and singing. And it's just, even though it's a much slower moving or at least slower scoring sport, it's just such a unique environment that it's fun to be at that too. So that's a non-answer to your question.
No, I love it.
But I like them all.
What's the difference between announcing it at the different location? Obviously, when you're in an arena as opposed to a stadium, as opposed to even a stadium with soccer. I mean, what's the difference between how you announce those?
I don't know that I technically go into it thinking I need to do it differently. Some are just the mechanics of the sport. I don't do much differently with my voice, but I do think there are different energies you bring depending on the atmosphere or the environment. Like soccer, during the event, you're not talking much at all. It's goals, cards, substitutions. That's it. That's the only time. Otherwise, I'm just kicking back watching soccer with my friends, basically. Football, it's kind of weird because you want to get the crowd loud when you're on defense and keep them quiet when you're on offense, because the quarterback needs to hear and the team needs to hear the quarterback's count. And so, when it's third down, we're doing bear down. It's third down, trying to get people crazy. But on the offensive side, it's kind of opposite what you would think it would be. So I'm trying to give the information, be excited, first down, Bears, but then get out because we need people to die down a little bit before the next snap. Basketball is the opposite. It's, when your team hits a big shot, it's, 3 points, Zach LaVine, and you want people to go crazy. And on defense, you're not doing a whole lot. So I think it's less the building and more just the mechanics of the sport that kind of change how my energy and my focus is. But it's fun regardless. You just got to, keep them all straight.
Do each of the different sports have rules as when you can say something as an announcer then?
Yeah. Okay. We'll start with football. That seems to be the most complex or the most stringent. Technically, when the play clock gets below 20 seconds, I can't do anything to encourage the crowd to make noise, no matter who has the ball. We can't play music. We can't play prompts that are audible. I can't do bear down, it's third down. I literally only information. So if it's below 20 seconds, I could say first down and 10 for the Bears at their own 23, but not with any inflection. Below 15 seconds, I can't say anything. So once the play clock gets to 15, I have to shut up. The other thing is if the team is in a hurry up, either team, and as soon as the center is over the ball, that negates all the other rules. So if they're doing a hurry up and they're trying to, get another play in and it's 28 seconds on the clock, but they're getting ready to go over the ball, I've got to shut up. So I have to determine how much information I can get out there in the amount of time that I think I have, but also pay attention to the time that I really have based on sort of what the team's doing. Basketball is much less stringent. Gameplay, you can talk, you can kind of do whatever. They do want you to make sure you're saying 2 minutes at the end of each quarter. There are some things that you kind of have to get in, but there aren't so many rules as to what you can say or when you can say it.
Okay. Have you ever gotten lost as a fan and forgot to do your job?
I want to say no. I don't think I have. The only time there was one Bulls game last year where the shot clocks broke before the game, and they didn't have time to take them down and fix them, and so they put shot clocks in the corners on the floor, and that's where they are now. There have been times that has happened in the NBA before, and the coaches are like, yeah, we'll just deal with it. Well, in that game, the coaches agreed, and this is in the rule book, that they can ask the public address announcer to count down, to do every 5 seconds, 20, 15, 10, and then count down 5 to 0. and sort of be an audible shot clock since it's not up on the backboard. That is really hard, for one, from a PA perspective, in addition to all the other things you're doing. And so there were a couple of times I got lost in all the other stuff I was doing that I missed, like saying 10, for example. Minor thing, but that was one time that I realized, there's a whole lot going on. But from the fandom part, you watch games so differently as a PA guy. I am a fan, but the job overtakes that pretty easily just because there's so much other stuff to worry about.
I wasn't sure I would keep my composure in a playoff game or whatever. You talked about the excitement behind you and, just maybe getting lost in a moment of that energy right there.
You get nervous, I suppose, like not like scared nervous, but like that nervous energy that you want your team to do well or win or hit a big shot or kick the field goal. But it's not to the point that I get lost in it, at least not yet. So knock on wood, that doesn't happen.
You talked about kind of, fandom part of it. And what was that like announcing without fans then?
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, I hated it. And eventually I did 100 and some games in a row without a single fan, which, you start to get used to it. And I didn't want to get used to it. I didn't like that. It was weird because speaking about the differences between leagues, each league had their own rules about what you could and couldn't do to fill that void that was left by the fans. In basketball, we could play fan noise and it could rise and fall based on the gameplay, and there would be cheers and chants. Whereas in football, in the stadium, they allowed a low-level crowd murmur. So in the stadium, that's all we could hear. On TV, they were allowed to add crowd noise, but in the stadium, we couldn't hear any of that. And so that felt very strange because there'd be a big play and it sounded exactly the same as a timeout and exactly the same as, pregame warmups. It was just bizarre. So getting fans back was really, really nice.
I was going to ask you about the bubble as well. I guess it was fun being down in Disney, but you couldn't do anything.
Correct. I've frequently referred to it as NBA summer camp. So it's just like going to camp. Everybody's kind of in the same place. Everybody has their own rooms. You can go fishing and swimming and biking and, go on hikes and stuff, but you couldn't leave the outskirts of the place that was designated for us. And then occasionally you get on the bus, but instead of going whitewater rafting, you'd be going to an NBA game to go to work a game. And it was, instead of with a bunch of kids from your neighborhood, it was with NBA players and officials. So you could be walking around and see LeBron and AD or, whoever. It was really weird at first and got a little less weird, although not entirely. But it was a long time away. I'm glad I did it. I would not want to do it every year, but to have done it, and to have those memories and experiences, I'm really, really glad I got that chance.
Did you get to hang out with any of the players while you were there, or get the intermix, or get to know them a little better?
A little, not a ton. They had their set schedules of having to go to practices and team meals and meetings and games, and so there wasn't a ton of that. But there was a restaurant. There's a place that everybody could go and just get food, and it was weird because you would just show up and take food and then leave, and I felt like I was stealing every time. But then there was a restaurant where you could go and actually pay to eat, and quite often a lot of the players would be out there, so you'd be sitting near, there was LeBron and AD and a couple of those Lakers guys at a table right next to mine, or the Markieff and Marcus Morris brothers were sitting together having dinner, and you'd be right next to them. And I talked with a few guys from the Heat and the Trailblazers, and so you get to have little short conversations, but everybody had a job to do, and while it was still fun, most people kind of had blinders on to go get to where they needed to get. So maybe not as much as it would be at an actual summer camp, but it was still pretty cool.
Did you buy any of Jimmy Butler's coffee?
Coffee. I did not. I understand he had plenty of it there in his room, but I never made a purchase. Maybe next time.
Hopefully, there's not a next time.
Yeah, right. Great point.
So, did the what is his name, Jim Rye? Did Rybant walk you through anything before he parted, or did you get to know him a little bit, or?
Yeah, he's the PA guy for the Bears before me. He did it from 83, I think, or 84.
37 years, I saw.
Yeah, he was there a really long time, and I've never met him. Never talked, never. I think that he was a little intentional about that, as I understand it, just not wanting to try to impact what I do or what I said or how I did the job. I don't think it was out of anger or frustration or, none of that. I think he just was trying to, give space. And it's always interesting. The same thing happened with the Bulls. When you take over for someone or someones who've done the job for 30, 40 years and are such an icon in that environment, it's hard because they hired you for a reason. They wanted me to be me, but also there's a lot of history that goes into all those things that fans have gravitated to, and so it's difficult to figure out what to do and what not to do. And I'd done football before on the collegiate level, but I'd never done the NFL and certainly had never done the Bears. So that took a little feeling out, although my first year was the year without fans. So I kind of had an entire season of a dry run before too many people heard it. You could hear it on TV a little bit, but there weren't that many people in the building to, boo me or throw tomatoes or things. So I got a chance to get all that out of my system before people came in to actually see them the following season.
So how overwhelming was it to be in Soldier Field?
I think it probably helped that I'd done the Chicago Fire soccer for, at that point, 6 or 7 years. I had been in Soldier Field for a couple of those seasons with the Fire. I'd done a lot of international soccer events that were sellouts there. So we'd had 62,000 people in that building. So the feel of it, the booth, the mic, the sound, that was the same or very similar to things I'd already experienced. The added pressure of it being one of the preeminent franchises in all of sports around the world, added a little weight to it. And all the Bears fans who are sitting right there waiting to hear what this new guy sounded like, obviously added a little pressure, but it definitely helped that I'd been there and done that a little bit at least in the building for a number of years leading up to it.
You probably don't get a lot of hate mail, do you?
I don't, thankfully. It used to be nobody had access to the PA guys, right? Because you'd have to write the team and say, this guy's terrible. But now with social media, and I'm fairly active, anybody can say anything at any time if they want to. And on occasion, you get that. But I thankfully, again, knock on wood, have been really fortunate. Both Bulls and Bears taking over for legends who had a long history in Chicago, that people have really been pretty good at being positive and welcoming me with open arms. And even if I'm doing something that they don't like, or if I've changed a tradition that they came to know and love, that they've been understanding. And obviously there's an occasional, person who just wants to pick a fight. But for the most part, I've been really, really fortunate.
Talk a little bit about the experience of trying out for this. Like, how did you, audition, interview? What was that like?
Yeah, it's fairly similar to most jobs, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. Like, you see a job posting and then you send a cover letter and a resume. And quite often with things like this, they want to hear you before they ever talk to you. So you provide some sort of demo reel. For me, it was interesting because I was working for the Indiana Pacers as well as University of Illinois and the Chicago Fire. Those were kind of the three that I'd been doing. And I knew I couldn't add a whole lot more to my schedule, but but the NFL was always one that I went, if I ever get an opportunity, I want to try because there's relatively few games. And I saw the Bears opportunity pop up, and I heard Jim was leaving, and I went, man, I got to at least give it a shot. Like, I don't know that I have a shot, but I'll give it a shot. And so I did exactly what I described, sent them an email with a cover letter and resume and tape, and basically got a, hey, thanks. We're going to start working on this at the end of the season. We'll be in touch. Well, it felt like forever. And it was just, hey, we're going to look on this after the new year. Then, every 2, 3, 4 weeks, we'd get an update. And I had been fortunate enough to be asked to do the NBA All-Star Game in Chicago that February. And it was the following week that the Bears called and said, hey, we want to take this to the next level. I don't know that they had anything to do with each other, but it didn't hurt that a national audience had just heard me in their city doing that job. And so then it was a video sort of chat like this. They sent me some tapes of old games and wanted to hear me, what would you do in this situation? So I recorded the audio for about 6 or 7 different scenarios. Then they called me in for an actual interview at Hallis Hall. And that was March the...
Is that a place in Chicago somewhere?
Oh yeah,
Hallis Hall is the Bears headquarters. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, I'm not from Chicago, so
Yeah,
I don't know. I've only been there twice. So
if you've seen all the guys showing up today for training camp, that's the gates they're walking through are the ones I walked through for that interview.
okay, I wasn't sure.
Yep.
And maybe there were some people that didn't know either.
No, I'm glad you said that. And that was, I think, March 9th of 2020.
wow.
And if you remember, I had that interview in the morning. I had a Pacers game that night. So I drove from Chicago to Indy, did the Pacers game. That was the night Rudy Gobert came down with COVID.
Yeah.
The next day, I started the Big Ten tournament in Indy.
That was the day, huh?
And those 2 games, we announced, hey, we're going to go ahead with the tournament, but nobody's going to be allowed to be here. And the next morning, everything was canceled. So that week, I thought things were progressing with the Bears, and then everything came to a grinding halt. This is a long answer to a short question, so I apologize.
The stage is yours.
It's all great stuff. All great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, that fall, the Bulls had also announced that Tommy Edwards was retiring and leaving, and I had been reached out to about that. Well, while I love the Bulls, I love Chicago. That's the most iconic intro in sports, in my opinion. I had only been with the Pacers just over a year, and I didn't feel like I could just up and leave for no reason, so to speak. So I was like, well, I'm not interested. And I told them I wasn't interested. But then the Bears thing happened, and so I messaged them back, and I was like, look, if I get the Bears job, then I'm interested in the Bulls job, because then it would be the Bears, the Bulls, and the Fire all in Chicago. It would make my life so much easier, and it's in the city that I love, my home state, like all of that. And so when things came to a grinding halt with the Bears because of COVID, that put the Bulls on hold too. And so now everything was at a standstill, and it wasn't until the bubble, when the NBA asked me to go to the bubble that summer, that the Bears were finally able to make a decision. I came into Soldier Field and did an in-person audition like a week and a half before I left for Florida. They called me while I was in Florida, offered me the job. The Bulls heard about it, called me and said, hey, can you do an audition for us now? So I'm in my hotel room with blankets over my head trying to record the Bulls intro. And a few months later, got that job as well. So it was a really weird year, but it worked out ultimately pretty well.
Sweet. Yeah, I had one more question. How did you get offered to the bubble?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily know. I went with the NBA asks. So that's the short answer. How they chose, I don't know. I was in Mumbai, India with the Pacers in 2019, and I essentially worked for the NBA while we were there, and they happened to like my work there. That's what got me the offer to do the All-Star game in Chicago, and then obviously got me the offer to come to Florida for the bubble and to do the All-Star game this past year too. So I don't exactly know how that works, but when they ask, I'll show up.
Okay.
What's the toughest part of kind of breaking into the business? You said you were trying to do the Pacers and all these different places. Is that tough? Just trying to kind of schedule wise, make sure that you're getting your name out there and everything out there, and then just trying to do your job in different locations and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're working out of 3 cities, which for a while I had Champaign, Indy, and Chicago. It's just a lot of time on the road, and there are sacrifices to saying, I'm going to put in the work to hopefully develop a resume and a talent that people want to hire down the line. At Illinois, when I wasn't doing anything professionally, I would work swimming and diving and wrestling and gymnastics and softball and like all these random sports that could have anywhere from 20 to 250 people at them, but I just wanted to work. But once things started spreading out, then it became a calendar thing. And most people knew I was working multiple things, but you did have to make decisions from time to time and say, look, I'm stuck here. I would like to help you out, but I also have this opportunity, and start to talk to people about what you could and couldn't do. Now at this level, there is everybody knows the hierarchy. So Bears for our first, if there's a Bears game, I am there. I don't know who my backup is because I don't think there is one. It's show up. So if that's on the schedule, I will be there. After that is the Bulls. And then the Fire and the Illini are kind of, depending on what happens right after that. And we just wait till all the schedules come out. We look for any overlaps, and then I start calling bosses and say, look, if this game stays at this time, I can't do them both. So have somebody on standby. Quite often, each of the last few years, I've had a Bears game at noon on a Sunday and a Bulls game at 7. So I've had 2 games in the same day, which is interesting. But such is the life. Everybody understands it. When I signed my contracts, everybody was aware of it. And I'm really fortunate that I've got a lot of people who are super flexible and willing to let me do that.
Is there something that you turned down when you were working with the Pacers that maybe you wish you hadn't at the time, or? I missed out on nothing major. Like, there were several rugby events that came to Soldier Field over the past few years that they asked me to come do. I know nothing about rugby. But they're like, we'll have someone sitting right next to you telling you what to say. But I had another event that I'd already committed to in a different place, and it just didn't allow me to get there. I've missed like last year's Illinois Notre Dame game at State Farm Center. I had to be at a Bulls game, and so I wasn't able to do that. The Bulls were nice enough to, when there was no fans in the building, let me out of a game so I could do the NCAA tournament in Indy. I did like 14 games there in 2020, and they said, yeah, it's just one game. It's okay. We have a backup. There's no fans in the building anyway. And they let me over to Indy to work all of those games. So you just got to make decisions, ask questions, and see how it shakes out. But for the most part, there's a structure to it.
Tim, real quick, I wanted to bring in my Philadelphia Flyers journalist. He has some questions for you as well.
Oh, good.
And
Philly sports fans, I hear, are really kind.
And I'm going to bring him in right now. And here he is.
What's up, Frankie?
Sorry, I'm late to the party. I was working on my pipes to try and get as good as Tim over there, but man, he is good. I'll tell you that right now.
What's up, Frankie? How are you, man?
How are you? It's I heard that you were going to be coming on the Damn Good show, and it's already been an even better show of what I could have only imagined. But a huge fan. Hearing your voice, obviously, one of the first things I thought about was obviously the 2K game, I believe that NBA 2K22. I actually just got off my podcast, so I was a little delayed. What was that like, having the opportunity to kind of be the voice for the game? Not many people, I'm sure you probably hear it all the time, but it's quite interesting now.
Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, it was a great idea, first of all, by 2K to try to make everybody's arena feel more like it really does when you're there. And when I got that call, I was instantly excited about doing it. I knew it was going to be a long, tedious week recording. I mean, the recording isn't necessarily fun because it's a lot. You're tired. We only go about 4 hours a day because it just wears on your voice that much. But for me, more so than being in the game, it's getting behind the scenes of the game to see how it all goes together and how because for those who haven't played, someone's playing the game and then the game is figuring out what's happening and commentating and figuring out the public address stuff that goes with it as it happens. And so they have to be ready for pretty much everything, which means when we record, we have to record pretty much everything. And so I already have done 2K23. I was in Los Angeles at the end of May and recorded for that. So looking forward to that game coming out. And it's been, man, the opportunity of a lifetime. I keep saying that and I keep having more of them. So, I mean, I guess it means it's not the opportunity of a lifetime, but it's really exciting to do.
Yeah.
And getting me sort of behind the curtain has been fantastic.
Yeah. And that's really cool. Another one of the big questions I obviously had, being out here in Philadelphia, born and raised Philadelphia, what you do is such an important part of the game. Out here in Philly, we had guys like Harry Callis, Lou Nolan with the Philadelphia Flyers. Mr. Nolan's an incredible man. Wish I had the opportunity to obviously meet Harry Callis, but sadly I didn't. But those voices, Mel Reese, like you have those guys that it's essentially like when they move on, whether retirement or sadly death, it's tough to fill that void. But my question for you to kind of lead into it is, when you had gotten take the job with the Bears in 2020, you took over for someone that was doing it for 37 years. What was that transition like? Because that is, Mr. Rubin, I can't remember, but pronounce his last name. I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, Jim Reband.
Yeah. Thank you. And who doesn't know him? It's those were shoes. Long career. But I will say, being out in Philadelphia, obviously I do get to catch some Chicago stuff. Not a big fan of the Blackhawks. They've ruined my life in 2010. But you've done an incredible job when you're with the Bears. I definitely have to applaud you on that because those shoes to fill weren't easy. But what was that like in your relationship with Mr. Reben at the time?
Yeah, it's been, anytime you step into something like that, it's with a little bit of fear and trembling because regardless of quality, and everybody I've stepped in for has been really good at their job, but there's familiarity. And so people by and large hate stuff that's new, that changes what they know. And so sometimes there's just a natural reaction to dislike something simply because it's different. I feel like in general, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, I've been really well received and I will eternally be grateful for that. The hardest things I think are like, what do you
getting your hair so perfect? That's essentially the hardest part for me.
Nobody gets to see it. But I think, like, what do you keep versus what do you not? Jim would always do the thing on there's a timeout, and the whole crowd would chant, "Where?" And he'd say, "On the field." And half the people loved it, and that was like the reason they went to Bears games, and then half the people hated it, and it was sophomoric and stupid. And so I kind of asked, like, is that something I'm being told I have to do or not? I asked that question, and they said, you are being told that you should do what you feel is right to do.
Your own identity. That's incredible.
Is great, but also that means everybody who hates my decision, it's coming back to me. I can't blame the team. It's
double-edged sword.
So I just felt like that was so tied to Jim more
Do
so
you-
than the Bears.
Since we're talking about the Bears real quick, do you do the 1, 2, 3 first down, or do you just do first down?
I do first down Bears, and I do touchdown Bears, and so that's kind of my cadence for those things, and that all plays into this though, right? Like, are you going to do it the way the other guy did, or are you going to do it the way you wanted to? The big one. So I decided not to do the timeout thing. I don't say anything. When they go to timeout, they go to timeout, and everybody knows it because they're not playing football anymore, and we're talking about something else. But they did ask that, every NFL team when their team's on defense on third down, they want something to pump the crowd up. And I don't know if it's every team, but most of them do it's third down. And I didn't want to do that. I just I didn't. In fact, my boys and I used to go to Colts games from time to time, and they do that there.
That's
And I
when
know
that
Mike,
stupid
who
1,
does
2, 3 first down started.
The 1, 2, 3 first down in Indy. Yeah.
and I've heard that too. I just didn't want to copy anyone. And we used to always go, and when I knew it was third down, I would say to the boys, I'm like, hey, do you guys know what down it is? And I knew right when Mike was going to go, it's third. And they were, 4 and 6. So they loved that. But I had to come up with something for the Bears that did the same job, but that wasn't that. And so I decided on a whim for my audition to do bear down, it's third down.
Oh.
And that, bear down is their thing. It's been their slogan forever. You got the down and down. And so my brain kind of thought maybe that'll work. And so now we do bear down. It's
Incredible.
bear down. And then people,
Excellent.
there we go crazy.
That's incredible. I used to just do the Sweet Caroline. That was always, you always get ready for that one. Appreciate the answer. That was incredible. I'm obviously, I had to come in, say hello, and obviously answer the questions that I did. I don't want to take up too much of the time, but I really appreciate you answering those couple of questions. Huge fan, and maybe I'll put on a Chicago game every now and then.
Hey, that'd be great. It's nice to meet you, Frankie. Thanks
Nice
for
to
hopping
meet you
in
guys.
and having
Thank
me
you
answer
so much.
All right, Frankie, take
Thank
it
you,
easy, man.
Frankie.
That was Frankie. He likes making appearances.
That's awesome.
So when you family wise, were they kind of surprised when you kind of did this, and then does your dad and the family members also have kind of similar voices where they can say, oh, I can do that? Or, I mean, do they kind of give you a hard time sometimes?
My grandfather, I take after him in a lot of ways. My mom's dad, he was tall, thick head of hair, deep voice, so there's a lot of that. My dad has some of that. Yeah, there are times where I'll hear him talk that, I can hear a little bit of me in there, or vice versa. And he's really who shaped my love of sports. So a lot of it, I haven't heard him try to mimic me per se. That doesn't mean he doesn't when I'm not around. But I haven't heard it. My boys they're junior high now. Well, one of them's going to high school, so they're teenage boys, and they're kind of over it,
So
They love the
I have a
party.
real quick question, Tim.
Yeah.
Do their friends know you're on the video? I was going to bring up the video game, but obviously Frankie beat me to it. But do your boys' friends know you're on the video game?
Oh yeah. Every time, frequently my kids will come back and go, another one of my friends is following you on TikTok now, or, so-and-so said they heard you on 2K. And I get copies of the game. So like last year, I obviously gave my boys a copy, but then I gave them each a copy to give to one of their friends who had, a PlayStation or whatever. So I tried to give them some benefits of this too, to spread the love and share the wealth with some of their friends. So yeah, they know.
Do you hear them, maybe even when they're playing video games, like announcing or maybe wanting to go into that eventually?
One of my boys is very soft-spoken, and so maybe he'll grow into that. But at the moment, he's content to be the quieter of the two. My oldest, I haven't heard that specifically. He's more of a stats numbers guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has very quick recall and knows every stat of it way better than I do. And so that's been more his thing. It will be very interesting to see sort of what they ultimately do. But they do play as the Bulls on the game so that they can hear me when. So
Cool.
I haven't completely embarrassed them to the point of wanting to steer clear of it yet. And also they get tickets to a lot of games, so they know it's a good thing for them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wish
I
I
wanted-
wanted huh? Getting those Jordan tickets.
Tim, I wanted to ask you about Ringer and Stump. Like, can you tell me more about that? Because I didn't realize you're the CEO.
Yeah, so in 2014, I spent most of my career in radio. I jumped into television eventually for 3 or 4 years, and while I was doing public address. And my goal was, I was just frustrated with having really crappy audio for a lot of the radio interviews I was doing. And so I was trying to come up with a solution. Ringer became the solution. I say I accidentally started a startup. And it's funny because it was years ahead of its time, but it's essentially the audio version of kind of what we're doing right now, where
Right.
you can connect with multiple people. It's just audio, but the goal is your device records you, my device records me, and we don't record the static and delay and all that, hiccup stuff you get because the internet's the internet. And then it brings it together afterwards, so it sounds like a perfectly back and forth conversation. So that started in 2014. And it's still alive and well. However, things like, anything, StreamYard and Zoom and everything else, technology is kind of caught up that most audio and now video is pretty darn good without that separate recording. Ringer is still better, but most people prefer free over paid. And so a lot of people will go the free route. So what we did with Stump was we took our patented technology for Ringer and we're trying to make audio social. So the goal has been to record with either by yourself or with up to 4 friends, kind of like we are now. It's going to sound amazing, but it becomes an instant podcast. As soon as you're done, you can upload it, tag it, title it, and post it to your Stump feed, which is an app for any device you have. And your friends on Stump can listen. You can share it. You can comment just like you would on Instagram or Twitter. And then you can share that audio on other platforms as well. So you can share it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And it literally just came out like within the last month or so. We launched Stump and are starting to see some traction. My podcast, which we talked about earlier, The Call, is available exclusively on Stump. I'm kind of trying to cheat the system a little bit. And if you want the content, you got to check out my new platform.
Nice.
But it's worked really well. And we've got probably just shy of 1,000 people on now in a fairly short amount of time. And the goal is to get more and more content creators there so that, it's more than just my stuff to listen to. And it's been a lot of fun. I think there's a huge upside for it. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when I looked it up, I thought, okay, Stump must be fairly new because I hadn't heard about it. And then what attracted me to wanting to ask you about it in the first place was it seems so mobile.
And it's exclusively mobile. And that was our goal was, with Ringer, we wanted to set it up so like in a studio environment, you could run it through your workstation. But for Stump, this is not for the professional. I've been talking through today with 2 different people who are trying to set up podcasts, and you have to have a podcast host, and then you get your RSS feed, and then you've got to send your RSS feed to things you've set up with Apple and Spotify. And Stump is literally, you hit a button, you record, and then you hit upload, and it essentially, we're the host and we're the distributor. And then if you want to share it to other social media, you can. So we've tried to make it super easy, completely free, and ideally something that people can do anytime, anywhere, whether you're 13 years old or 83 years old, and make it really easy. So.
Sort of like the TikTok of podcasting.
It kind of is. There's some similarities to it. Yeah.
I mean, easy to use, right? Like,
I've been saying Instagram for audio, but the TikTok of podcasting is also really good. I like it.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to download these things and check them out myself. I mean,
Please do.
everyone wants to be a podcaster these days, right? I mean, go figure.
They do. Everybody has something to say, and now you have a free and easy way to say it without feeling like you have to have a huge studio set up and pay $15 a month for a hosting service and all that kind of stuff. When our research found that most podcasts are 6 episodes long and then people quit. And so, as you guys know, it's hard to do and to keep up with. And so this is kind of an easy way to do it whenever you want, by yourself or with others, and you don't have a big any outlay of cash, and it's easily shareable. And so hopefully we've taken away some of those pain points.
Now that we're on podcasting talk, Tim, do you even get told no, I can't, or let a later time? Because you have more like of a higher step than like me or NFL Outdated there. But NFL Outdated is really good at getting guests. I don't know what he does down there, but he's really good. You have to check out some of his stuff one day. Yeah,
I mean, right now with my podcast, I typically go to people I know or have a direct connection to. Now, thankfully, I have some pretty good connections just by nature of my seat at a lot of games. But that's one of the reasons I decided to do that specific podcast. One, play-by-play guys are great storytellers, as we talked about. They've got good voices, but I have access to them and know many of them personally, and it's a pretty small fraternity. So far, everybody has said yes, but there's some people I haven't gotten to. That's the hard part. It's like if I could get to them, I think I could get Joe Buck and Jim Nantz and some of those guys, but I'm 1 or 2 people removed from getting there. So one of these days they'll be on, maybe second season.
Me and Andy had a little conversation with Lanny Fratteri, the old Pirates announcer. That was a fun little day, huh? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So I'm sure somebody will tell me no eventually to answer your question.
Well,
I was just wondering if you still had trouble bringing on people, even though you were the higher up. I mean, that was.
Scheduling is the hard part. Like Chuck Swirsky, the play-by-play guy for the Bulls, a good friend of mine. We were trying to get something done last week. His schedule and my schedule kept conflicting, and then he was going on vacation, and so finally we're just like, we'll do it. We'll do it when he gets back. So in August we'll reschedule and get something done then.
Sounds good.
Speaking of kind of in the future, do you have dreams like events that you would love to call in the future?
Yeah, I think the Olympics. Anything in the Olympics would be great. World Cup game would be great. Unfortunately, they're coming to North America, but Chicago is not one of the cities that's going to have a game. So,
what year is this?
What's that?
What year is it coming back?
26, I think. It'll be, and they're kind of doing Mexico, U.S., Canada, kind of spreading it out.
Didn't they do that in '94 too?
Sounds right. I don't remember exactly, but that sounds right. So I'll have to be asked to go to another city. So we'll see if that happens. And I think a Super Bowl would be great. Alan Roach has a pretty firm grasp on that at the moment, and he's great at what he does. So not trying to take anyone's job, but if it came open, I'd be interested. The NBA Finals would be another one, but to me, like that's a reflection of how good the team is, not how good I am. Like, that's it would be fun to do, but it's not an honor per se because it has nothing to do with me. Being asked by the NBA to do the All-Star game in the 75th, like now that's an honor because that's based on performance and what they think of you. But don't get me wrong, if the Bulls could make it to the finals, I'd be all over that.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for this young gentleman? I'm sure we could sit here and talk all day, but
yeah, especially Bears and Bulls stuff. I could definitely talk forever.
He's a big Chicago fan, as you can tell.
I like it, even though you're living north of the border, huh?
Absolutely. Well, I've spent time in Minnesota 10 years and here in Wisconsin 8 years. So yeah, I've kind of been trying to infiltrate the area and get some key details that I can't pass on to anybody. So
nice, love it.
But, Tim, it's been fun.
Thank
You
you,
know,
Tim. It's an honor.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to talking again soon sometime, I hope.
yeah, I was just gonna say what to bring you back on. Maybe we'll get a little recap and see how you're doing in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Cool.
guys. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
Can we get a one last bear down?
Sure. Bear down. It's third down.
Love it.
Yay.
I love it.
Love it. That was awesome.
Oh man, like, do people ask you to do that all the time though? Whenever you come on,
Yeah, I would say it's fairly regular on podcasts. A lot of times people like, you're hanging out with friends or they're introducing you to somebody new and they're like, hey, do it. And it doesn't work as well with 6 people as with 60,000, or 20,000 in the United Center. Everybody wants and now they want, so I'll give about that much, but I tend to not take it any farther than that. One, it draws a whole lot of attention. And I'm just, that's not me. So
I was gonna say, is it harder? It's got to be harder to do just out of the limb than actually at the game.
you do get a little energy from the music and the environment and the fans, that it is hard to draw the exact same energy when you're just, standing in someone's living room.
Like your living room.
Or mine, right?
Thank you so much, Tim. It was an honor and privilege to talk to you.
Of course. My pleasure, guys.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Andy, always
Fun. Appreciate you bringing me on.
You gonna stick around for a minute?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, all right. We and Gene are going to close out the show, and we'll be right back. Oh, wrong person. Shit. Down. Well, Gina, we did our first show here.
Yes, the conversation room.
Yeah.
And Tim Sinclair was an amazing first guest.
Yes.
So I know I'm thrilled that it went well.
It did. And I hope everyone enjoyed our first show here today. And we're going to say good night, and everybody have a good day.